So I've done a couple of different videos on Magic the Gathering, some being on the computer game Magic the Gathering Arena, where I play some games, others being videos of me opening different packs or decks. Today I wanted to do a quick video touching on some ideas or principles when building a deck. So, if you end up finding this interesting, hit the like button and I'll know to make some similar videos. So, one of the first things to think about when you go to make a deck is, the theme you want to do. Do you want to do, a creature deck to, deal damage to your opponent's life that way? Do you want to do a milling deck? Do you want to do a control deck? I don't want to say irritate your opponent, but so you can kind of get rid of their stuff so that you can hold out for whatever it is in your deck that's your win condition. So some control decks are, countering your opponent's spells as they play it. Some control decks are, kill spells to, once the creatures are hitting the battlefield, just things like that to control your opponents, what they're doing. Some decks are built around milling your opponent, so their library runs out, so to speak, because one of the ways you can lose is if you go to draw a card from your library and you have no cards to draw. That's a loss unless you have a card out that specifies otherwise. So let's get into it. I'm sort of playing around with tokens, counters kind of deck. So I started with a couple of cards. This one is Call of the Conclaves, which puts a 3/3 green Senator token onto the battlefield. It costs a forest and a plains, so 2 mana for a 3/3 creature seems decent. And then where it's a token, there's going to be other stuff to duplicate tokens, so to speak. And then, like I said, I kind of was doing tokens and counters, so I'll not only be duplicating the counter or duplicating the tokens, but then adding 1/1s to buff the creatures. Contingents plan. It's a blue card that proliferates, so choose any number of permanents and or players and give each another counter of each kind they already control, and then draw a card. So that's pretty cool. If I have a dozen tokens with 1/1 counters, hey, they should get another 1/1 counter. I have some planeswalkers I'm going to throw in the deck, so give each of them another loyalty counter. Smell Fear, proliferate, target creature you control fights up to one target creature you don't control. So again, adding counters, and then maybe dealing with annoying creature your opponent has that they don't want to block with. Yeah, let's get rid of that. Steady Progress. another card that proliferates and draws a card. Here's a personal favorite in, the particular color, Pledge of Unity. It's 1, a forest, and a plains. Put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. You gain 1 life for each creature you control. So it may or may not seem overpowering. Obviously, the more creatures you have, the more creatures that are getting 1/1 counters, plus you're gaining a life for each of those creatures. So, okay, early on, it costs 3, so let's say you only have 2 or 3 creatures. Well, okay, whoop-de-doo, 2 or 3 creatures get 1/1 counters and you gain 2 or 3 life. But where it's going in a token deck, let's say I get 50 or 100 tokens, bam, 100 tokens, get +1/+1, and then hey, I gain 100 life. Yeah, that gets pretty cool quick, depending on what your board state looks like. Flurry of Wings. So it's 3 different colors to play it out. So could really go either way. It's a forest, a plains, and a island. Put X 1/1 white-bird soldier creature tokens with flying into play, where X is a number of attacking creatures. So obviously, token deck, the more stuff you have attacking, the more tokens you create by playing this. Or it's an instant, so you could technically play it on your opponent's turn when they go to attack it. Hey, I'm making all these 1/1 tokens, and where it's equal to the number of attacking creatures. There you go. You have 1 creature for every creature your opponent's attacking with you. You 1/1 block them. You may or may not lose them all, but you're blocking all the damage your opponent's throwing at you unless they have trample on something. Fungal Sprouting. So, it's a green card that puts X 1/1 green sapling creature tokens on the battlefield, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So where, this deck I'm trying to tweak has, stuff to put 1/1 counters and then proliferate. I might get some creatures eventually that, are 10/10s, 15/15s, whatever. Oh, hey, I'm gonna get that many 1/1 tokens. So, just different ways to make stuff. And Tethered Gambit. I think this might be a showcase card. I don't really remember. It just, the style looks a little bit different than a standard card. Draw 2 cards, then proliferate. So, again, you're drawing cards, so you're kind of, if you're running low on cards, you're getting stuff into your hand to play more stuff. You're proliferating. If stuff has counters on it, you're multiplying the counters, essentially. Fuel for the Cause. Counter target spell, then proliferate. Could go either way on this in the deck. It's countering stuff, so may or may not be helpful, but then the other part is proliferate, so figured it could help. Second Harvest. For each token you control, put a token on the battlefield that's a copy of that permanent. So if you have only one kind of token, not really helpful for, converted mana cost of 4 because it's 2 and 2 forests. But if you say have 10 different kind of tokens, you have a zombie, you have a sapling, you have a soldier, you have a bird token or something. Oh, hey, I have, 10 different kinds of tokens. Let's make a copy of all 10. You know. So, obviously, one of the more is better cards. March of the Multitudes. So, one of those kind of big cost, big payoff kind of cards. It's X, a forest, and 2 plains. And it happens to have the Convoke ability, so, where I have tokens on the battlefield, potentially, that counts towards the paying the mana. But Convoke is your creatures can help cast a spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color. And you create X1/1 soldier tokens on the battlefield with lifelink. So you're paying X to get X tokens. Pretty straightforward. The more you pay for X, the more tokens you're getting, which is obviously better. Full flowering. You pay X in the forest, so you're kind of, where you're paying X twice, you have less mana for it, where March of Multitudes was only had X once, you could pay 10 for X, but in this case where X is twice, you would have to do 5 and 5. But populate X times. To populate, create a token that's a copy of a creature token you control. Do this X times. So obviously the reason you're paying X twice is because you're making copies of creature token and you're doing it X times. So it would be a little bit broken, I guess, if you paid X once instead of twice. Slime molding. It's put an XX green creature token onto the battlefield. So obviously where X is there, the mana cost is X in a forest, so pretty big. And then I think it was this sapling card that it was you're getting X tokens for your largest creature. So then you, let's say you make a 20/20 ooze token and then play the sapling card next. Oh hey, I get 20 saplings because this ooze is a 20/20. This is a card that has 2 different sides that you could potentially play one or the other. One side's called supply, the other is called demand. I'm putting it in for supply because that's X, the forest, and the plains. Put X1/1 sapling creature tokens into play. Then we have Genesis, XX in the forest. Create XX green ooze creature tokens. So another thing making ooze tokens, but you're making X amount of them, so that's why X shows up twice. If it was only once and you paid 20 for X, you're getting 20 tokens, so that'd be a little overpowering, so they make you pay X twice, so instead of 20, you're paying 10 and 10, so you're only getting 10 of those 10 as opposed to 20, or 20 of the 20, so yeah, um, you know, fixing the card so it's not as broken, I guess. Then, you know, those make tokens, but I also, grab a couple of creature cards. The creature that, whenever Emera, Soul of the Cord, becomes tapped, create a 1/1 creature token with lifelink. So, what it creates a creature token that is making a token counter deck. Throw this guy on the battlefield. It taps when it attacks. Oh, hey, I get a token. Conclave, Mentor. If one or more 1/1 counters would be put on a creature, that many +1 1/1 counters are put on that creature instead. Whenever Conclave Mentor dies, you gain life equal to its power, so, hit Pledge of Unity, and then some stuff for Proliferate to increase the amount of counters on this guy, and then if, he attacks or blocks and dies, but his power is 10, hey, I gain 10 life off him dying, so it's not the end of the world. You have Merfolk Skydiver. It's a kind of looks like a merfolk kind of thing, but then it's flying like a bird would. It's only a 1/1 with flying, but when it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, so that kind of goes with the counter idea. And then you pay 3, a forest and a island, Proliferate. So Proliferate was the thing where you're choosing any number of permanents and or players and giving each of them another counter of that type. Evolution Sage. It's a 3/2. Whenever it enters the battlefield under your control, Proliferate. Wayfaring Temple. It's a star. When Wayfarer in Temple's power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. So obviously in a token deck, it's potentially something big. Maybe it could be a 50-50 mid to late game, assuming your opponent doesn't have a lot of, kill spells. When Wayfaring Temple deals damage to a player, Populate. Populate is put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of a creature token you control. So, there you go. You have this somewhat big creature, depending on how many creatures you have on the battlefield, then you're making more tokens. Biowaste Blob. Not 100% sure how this guy works because it's a 0/0, but then it says oozes you control get +1/+1. So I'm assuming it enters the battlefield as a 1/1. Instead of hitting the battlefield, it has 0 defense and going to the graveyard. I'm assuming that's how it works. Could be wrong. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a commander, create a token that's a copy of Biowaste Blob. So if you run this guy in the commander deck, you're making a copy of him, potentially. Trust Downey Selenia's voice. So it's 2 forests, 2 plains, so moderate mana cost, but it's 2 different colors, so you may or may not have that right off, in the beginning of the game, depending on the lands you're playing, or how your mana gets clumped. You might get too many forests, not enough plains, or vice versa. Spore Mound. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on. Or no, when a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 sapling. A sapling creature token onto the battlefield. So, creature that also has a landfall ability of making tokens. Yeah, this guy's pretty cool. My Colossus, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Devour 2. As this comes into play, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This creature comes into play with twice that many 1/1 counters on it. So 1/1 counters, that's pretty cool. You'll proliferate it later, maybe. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 sapling creature token into play for each 1/1 counter on my Colossus. So let's say he has 20 1/1 counters on it. Oh hey, next turn during my upkeep, I get 20 1/1 tokens. Hey, that gets pretty ridiculous fast. And it's 3 and 2 forest. So, it's not as crazy mana as it could be, even though you are sacrificing creatures to put the 1/1 counters on initially. Another crazy creature, although, could go in any other deck, doesn't necessarily have to work into this one. Archangel of Thune has flying and lifelink. Whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. All your guys get big quick. If you have this guy with lifelink hitting to gain the life, and then something else to, give all your creatures lifelink, which I have an enchantment for this deck. This one, now we're getting into a couple of the creatures that I'm kind of on the fence about because of high mana cost, but also kind of do sort of fun stuff. Vertillis, the Ancient, has a kicker of X. You may pay an additional X as you cast this card. Sapling creatures and other tree-folk creatures get +1/+1. So have a handful of, creatures or instant sorceries that make saplings, so they would get +1/+1. Not necessarily as a counter, just as a, they get that little bump in strength. When Vertillis, the Ancient, enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, put X/1/1 green sapling tokens onto the battlefield. So maybe late game, if you have 15 mana out on the battlefield, he only costs 6 initially, so 20 minus 6 would be 14. Hey, I'm kicking you 14 times. I put 14 1/1 counter, or 14 1/1 saplings, but more of a mid-late game. You get a draw when you need it, so that's kind of why I'm on the fence. Talismir, Wolfblood, 4 forest and a plain, so again, getting to the high end of the mana curve. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other white creatures you control get +1/+1. And you can tap them to put a legendary 2/2 green and white wolf token named Voja into play, which is kind of interesting that they, specifically are naming the legendary wolf token. Verdant Forest, it's 5 and 3 forest, so again a high mana cost, but it's a 7/7. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 sapling creature token. So again, something that's making tokens every turn, assuming your opponent doesn't kill it off. So have a few different planeswalkers just to add some 1/1 counters to creatures you control, or stuff like that. So where this is a 3-color deck, it's blue, green, white. I have a couple of different green-white dual lands, then some white-blue dual lands, and then green-blue dual lands, just to kind of cover the potential colors of casting the different cards. And then I had a non-basic land, but I must have said aside somewhere else that I think you're paying 4 or something, tapping the land and proliferating. So, I mean, as you can see, there's, when you're making a deck, if you're going with a certain theme, you're kind of like adding a handful of things together. You kind of have to be conscious of synergy, though, how things are going to work together. I really haven't play tested this because I'm still in the process of putting it together and tweaking it. But after I played the deck, half a dozen times, I'm going to, tweak it more. I'll pull a card here, add a card there, depending on, how I'm drawing consistently. Am I getting too many of my 5 or 6 mana cards in my starting hand? Okay, well, let's take a couple of those out and add some 2 or 3 mana costs. Or if I have 3 copies of one of the low mana cost cards, okay, am I only getting those later in the game? Just looking at small stuff like that to make adjustments. So hopefully you found some value. If you found this interesting, hit the like button and consider hitting subscribe. Thanks and have a good day.